York Times has a story today that the left is preparing for the arrival of a Trump administration. Dun, dun, dun. The hystericalism of it, if you will, of how they intend to proceed and operate, the resistance to a new Trump administration has already started. An emerging coalition that views Donald J. Trump's agenda as a threat to democracy is laying the groundwork to push back if he wins in November, taking extraordinary preemptive actions. I need to begin first with CNN, and it's somewhat embarrassing piece that they did with their Irish reporter, was it Donnie O'Sullivan or some such? He's a very nice guy, by the way. And essentially they went out and they're doing the fear scenarios of Donald Trump supporters say America is not a democracy, but a republic. Last I checked, the Pledge of Allegiance of the United States is to the flag and to the republic for which it stands. Now, if we're playing a semantics game here, the truth is, and there are, oh my gosh, there are so many self-appointed obnoxious experts out there who are convinced. Let me just give you the primer on this. So the Greeks had democracy, the Romans had republic. In essence, it's about rule by the people, but they structured it differently. The Greeks were direct in how they implemented democracy. The Romans had a republic which had democratic institutions, but also had dictators on occasion. That was the Roman Republic. We are a republic structured in the image of Rome with a Senate. That's why we have a Senate as opposed to Greek direct democracy where all the people vote all the time, which led oftentimes to chaos and oftentimes to the Greeks appointing dictators themselves. It's a battle of semantics between Greece and Rome, between the West and the East, so to speak. So we have a republic and we have democratic institutions. We are technically a constitutional republic. Anything that is not a monarchy tends to be called a republic. And we are technically a constitutional republic. So when Trump supporters say we're a republic or a constitutional republic, the inappropriate fear scenarios that CNN is doing are not only disrespectful and degrading to Trump supporters, willfully so. The lecturous tone on us being a democracy, it's not actually so in the form of a pure democracy. In fact, CNN was very dismissive in the audio of one Republican member of Congress saying we're a constitutional republic, which we technically are. We have democratic institutions. The House of Representatives was designed to be directly voted for by the people. The Senate originally was appointed by the state legislatures with the governor making an appointment and state legislatures approving. That moved to a democratic election, and frankly, I think we should go back to the states appointing the senators. The Supreme Court, of course, is life tenured and unelected. As you descend further and further into the republic down the reins of federalism, you get more and more democracy. The further up you go, you get less and less democracy. The President of the United States is elected by an electoral college. We elect the members of the electoral college who then vote for the president. We're 2 steps removed from the election of the president. For CNN to lecture us on us being a democracy is silly, it's arrogant, it's disdainful of Trump supporters, and it's no more accurate than people just saying we're a republic. It's actually a nuanced discussion. But part of that is being embraced by this resistance to the Trump administration by Democrats. A sprawling network of Democratic officials, progressive activists, watchdog groups, and ex-Republicans has been taking extraordinary steps to prepare for a potential second Trump presidency, drawn together by the fear that Mr. Trump's agenda to power would pose a grave threat not just to their agenda, but to American democracy itself. Again, this threat to democracy, I go back to David Axelrod last week, who pointed out that if you're sitting around your kitchen table discussing the threats to democracy, you live in a very privileged position in American society, because most Americans are sitting around the kitchen table talking about grocery prices. If you have the time, energy, and inclination to sit around your kitchen table fretting about threats to democracy, you're probably a well-off white person, frankly, where most people are vastly more concerned with the costs of living right now. So what these La Resistance members are doing is engaging in the best of America. Now, I know if you're a hardcore partisan, you don't want to put it that way, but they're engaging in the best of America. They're looking for legal avenues to stymie the Trump administration, which is perfectly fine, legal, and dandy. It's what conservatives are doing right now with Biden. And they're also looking at state efforts. In fact, there are states, this is so ridiculous. Washington State has stockpiled enough of the abortifacient drug mifepristone that it can survive and outlast a Trump administration. If every woman in Washington State decides they both want to get pregnant and abort it for virtue signaling, there will be enough of the pill to survive the Trump administration. That's federalism at work. There's nothing wrong with this. They're playing inside the rules. In fact, one of the funniest things I find is a passage about the American Civil Liberties Union that I just fell out laughing about. A common tactic to push back against the first Trump administration was through litigation that tied up his policies in courts. Sometimes that work succeeded in blocking actions entirely, and in other cases it delayed those policies from taking effect. The American Civil Liberties Union, one of the chief litigants against the first Trump administration, is planning to assume a similar role if he regains the White House. In anticipation of that role, the ACLU has hired a new auditing firm to do a top-to-bottom scrub of the organization's finances to ensure it can withstand scrutiny if a Trump administration were to sic the IRS on it. Now, you will notice what's left unsaid is that the Obama administration sicked the IRS on its critics, and the left likes to pretend that didn't happen, even though it actually did. Just kind of remarkable. But good for them. Good for them making sure that what they're doing is legal. Good for them making sure all their I's are dotted and T's crossed. There's nothing wrong with that. We should all embrace it and embrace the tactic. One of the things that the left has done that they're admitting in this and that we should pay attention to is a rush of regulations to ensure that those regulations were done by the spring. Why? Because there is a law, and that law says that if regulations are advanced by an administration in the outgoing months of that administration, those laws can be overturned by a simple majority vote in the next Congress. Any regulation that's enacted by the end of May of a presidential election year, Congress can't touch. It has got to go through the regulatory process or brand new legislation that can be filibustered. Any regulation that's enacted after that, the next Congress, by a simple majority vote and no filibuster, can get rid of that regulation. So the Biden administration advanced regulations rapidly. This is something that I do think Republicans need to talk about. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, was laughed at by some Senate Republicans for saying they need a reconciliation strategy. The Republicans are so in an election year mindset. Look at what the Democrats are doing. The Democrats are plotting what if scenarios for if Donald Trump gets elected, and that included rushing regulations as quickly as possible to get them passed before the end of the spring of the election year so that Congress can't repeal them with a very simple majority vote. The Republicans in the United States Senate and House of Representatives need to start planning two things. How do you repeal the regulations? How do you use reconciliation to do it? And also, what regulations can be quickly drafted and implemented as quickly as Donald Trump becomes president? How quickly can the regulatory process work to undo the regulations of the Biden administration? The left is giving us their playbook, and instead of being angry about it, we should embrace it. They're doing everything legally. In fact, they're hiring auditors to make sure everything's on the up and up. They're embracing federalism. They're embracing lawfare, which they are legally entitled to do to fight regulations. So Republicans need to respond in kind. Okay, we know what we're up against. So how do we weaponize reconciliation like the Democrats did to undo what they did? One of the ways you do it is you tax the people whose student loans were forgiven. You also undo the Green New Deal and roll back all the money spent on electric chargers. The other thing is you win the freaking election. Stop picking clowns. Those of you in Arizona, reject Kari Lake for a better Republican. That ensures you have an easier path forward in Arizona to win the election. Win these Senate seats. Take back the United States Senate. Pick up seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. Win the presidency. And then You can implement your regulatory agenda to roll back the Biden administration and advance your own. You can pass legislation through reconciliation that will then bind future administrations. And remember, reconciliation can't be filibustered. Play the game the Democrats are playing. Don't get mad about it. Get even. Win the election and do exactly what they're doing. Prepare for their lawfare. They're giving you signals now. And also, it's good to see the Democrats embracing states' rights. They did before the Civil War. They're now returning to their roots of embracing states' rights and saying, that the states have some level of sovereignty and the federal government can't stop us from doing things. Good. They should do that. Every state should be doing that. To the extent we can get the left and the right to disarm by recognizing the states have plenary power and Washington has limited power, the better off we're all going to be. Federalism is good. Radical federalism is great. We should be gutting Washington, D.C. if we take back power so that neither side can wage war against the other and let the states fight the states. That's what we need to do. And then pack as many conservatives in courts as possible. We have the power to do it if we play our hand right and win elections, and the data is looking very good. Ann Selzer, who's the dean of polling in the United States, she's the most respected, renowned pollster. She does an Iowa poll. She's got Donald Trump ahead by 18 points. Donald Trump won Iowa by 8 points in 2020. If Donald Trump is ahead by 18 points in Iowa, he is probably tied in Virginia, and he probably is ahead in Minnesota, and he probably will win at least Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, if not Michigan. These are warning signs for the Democrats, which is why they're beginning to prepare. Such warning signs that there's a growing muttering of Democrats that, yes, if Joe Biden has a bad debate in 11 days or whenever it is, it's going 10 days now, it's going to be time to show him the door. That's where the Democrats are out right now. They're beginning to openly fret about Joe Biden as Barack Obama has to hold him and lead him off a stage as he wanders around. And the Democrats are trying to tell us not to believe our eyes. Believe your eyes, believe what's coming, and believe, frankly, that the Democrats understand they've got a fight on their hands if Trump is president. Republicans need to do the same. You senators and Republican members of Congress need to take Mike Johnson seriously. Begin plotting reconciliation today so you can do it the moment you take back Washington without delay.